and good afternoon, everybody. I'll make a start while everyone's getting logged in and sorted and just do a quick introduction. Welcome to our Secret World of Schools School Dinners talk series. And this is our last of 4 sessions. And today we're looking at doorstep disadvantage, understanding poverty in the school setting. So just before we get going, just to introduce myself, I'm Mel Burgess and I'm Programme Manager for Culture Bridge North East. And Culture Bridge is part of Arts Council England's national network of bridge organisations, connecting education and cultural sectors together to enable better access to quality arts and cultural education for all children and young people, no matter their circumstances, which is really relevant to today's session. So I'm really delighted that Louise is joining us this lunchtime. She's the head teacher at Pennyman Primary School, and she's going to be focusing on the persistent problem of disadvantage in schools. So over to you, Louise. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel, and good afternoon, everybody. So thank you for taking the time, because I appreciate that it's busy at dinner time, but thank you for taking the time to attend today's session on life in schools for some of our most vulnerable children and young people. Like Mel said, this is obviously a really short session today, and I would normally include more detail, but I do hope this gives an overview of the issues that we deal with on a daily basis. If you do have any questions, I will try and give some time at the end, or I have attached our Twitter handle also, alongside our Trust Improvement Leads handle also. Sean was planning on trying to attend today alongside me, but unfortunately has not been able. Sean is a Trust Improvement Lead with myself and the team at Tees Valley Education, and he's partway through his own PhD examining school poverty. I know Sean himself will be more than happy for you to contact him also if you feel he could help in any way. So a little about me. As Mel said, I am the head teacher at Pennyman Primary, which is a school in Netherfields in Middlesbrough. My school is a mainstream school with a unit attached for children with medical and physical needs and associated learning needs. My other really important job is that as of a mum. I do have a 13 and 11-year-old, and I like to think I've got some experience of what this means in relation to everyday life in addition to schools. My philosophy is very much based on a child-centred approach, hence why I believe that the academic side of education is so important. However, the pastoral and welfare side of it is of equal importance. My school is part of the Multi-Academy Trust Tees Valley Education, and it's a trust of 5 schools, and each of these schools also serve really high areas of socio-economic deprivation. So whilst at Tees Valley Education we have researched poverty extensively, the more we unpick it, the more that we realise that it's arguably the most complex issue facing us as leaders and teachers in school currently. We are not experts, but we hope that this session today serves as a platform for some signposts to good practice and further understanding the persistent problem of poverty in our schools. So here's a very quick overview of where I intend to take this session. So what do we really mean by poverty and disadvantage? What are the implications for our work in school at all levels? And what is the what? So I promise you, because I don't like this myself, I won't cold call delegates today, but I just wanted to take 3 minutes at the start of this session to help frame what we mean by poverty in terms of real life terms. So please take a moment to read the statements above and think whether you think research does or does not state the following. You might only want to focus on 1 or 2, but we will go over answers shortly. So I'll just give you a moment just to read those statements and to consider that. Okay, I am going to move on because I appreciate time is short, but here are the answers. So we are not suggesting that each of these are definitive, but we do know that there will be some caveats around aspects of these findings. But as a general guiding principle for this session, let's take that the volume of disadvantage has been amplified by the pandemic, and we still don't know how big this impact is, because realistically, we're still feeling the impact of cases in school now. Pupil premium may be a starting point, but we have to look beyond this as a proxy in our schools. And like Norden and West talk about a hidden poor, we do talk about this as well. But put simply, poverty does wear a face mask in our school with regards to prejudice, assumptions, obstacles to learning, shame, guilt, anxiety, to name a few. So trying to get under the skin of poverty in our schools is not really a straightforward task. So doorstep disadvantage. So at Tees Valley Education, we use this term, and I know lots of other people will possibly use this term as well, to refer to a better understanding of the poverty that exists in our local schools and our local communities. But simply, what does poverty look like and feel like on the doorsteps of the families that we serve? Then, what are the barriers that are presented to our children because of this doorstep disadvantage? So now your turn, just to take a few seconds to jot down or ponder these questions. What do you understand by the term disadvantage and or poverty? And what does this look like in everyday terms in the community that you serve? Okay, so moving on. I have asked you to define disadvantaged individually, but this is what some researchers and authors define it as. So Houghton and Chancellor state that it is a general consensus that it is a pronounced deprivation of well-being. But by and large, it means we are lacking something that is needed. Lister states measures of poverty is sometimes used to operationalise the term poverty. It's been used in various ways to justify different policies. Townsend discusses a lack of resource and access to basic needs. And for me, this is probably the most commonly accepted definition, which is not without its issues though. And finally, Marmot and Court say that you can't talk about poverty without considering broader topics, such as household well-being, health and sustained poverty. But put simply, it isn't something that is an easy fix. So Rowland talks about the need for us to be experts in our pupils and not the pupil premium. And the pandemic has arguably made this much more complex than ever before, but it is something that should underpin our approach in everything that we do in schools. Yet the education landscape will sometimes use a proxy of pupil premium to both measure poverty and also address it. Okay, so I'm going to ask now if you could just contribute to the chat box and answer these questions if you wish to. I will then provide some ideas around it in a moment. I found this is a really helpful exercise to periodically do with my senior leaders and the system leaders within my school. So just a couple of seconds to complete this task. So I've asked you to consider the causes of disadvantage and its impact. And I feel that we're all guilty at times of talking about poverty in broad brushstroke terms in schools. If I give a couple of examples, most children here don't have access to a study space at home. Most parents nearby here can't read. This at times may be helpful, but it's also important to consider the forensic impact that disadvantage may be having in individual classrooms and how we address this as teachers or through CPD programmes. So to help us frame this, we're going to play a quick game of 8 out of 10 cats. So if you've never seen it, they harness opinion polls and celebrities have to guess the missing fact or figure or statistic. So have a go at writing down or adding to the chat box what you think the missing statistic is. Again, this may be a really helpful exercise for you to do with teachers or leaders in your own setting, or possibly governors or trustees too. So let's move on to the first one. So according to recent research in 2020, so it's relatively new, in an average UK school classroom, how many pupils are living in definite poverty? So on this, there's some conflicting research around this, but consensus at present is that this equates to around 30% of children, or about 9 or 10 pupils in a classroom of 30. However, as we know, poverty wears a face mask, and how we measure it is not always easy. So it is important to state that it's often that stats don't give us the full picture. And if recent research goes to show anything, it's that the pandemic has amplified the volume of socioeconomic disadvantage. So some studies show that the children from low-income homes will already have what percentage lower cognitive scores than pupils from higher-income homes? So there's the answer for this one. So when children of poverty are before the race actually starts, they need to develop their cognitive skills quickly and efficiently. As an example, we regularly have children coming into our school barely able to speak due to delayed development. And crudely put it, while many of our children are developing those basic skills of a normal 4 or 5-year-old, a more affluent child has already achieved this skill and are moving on to the next skill, while our other children are actually still acquiring that first one. They're always one step ahead. Broadly put, the less affluent they are, they're always a step behind. So here's the next one. So research carried out shows that income disparity impacted the following the most. So income disparity impacts language, including complexity of speech, vocabulary, and phonetical awareness more than any other cognitive area. The second most impacted cognitive system found was executive function. So that was like our working memory, our cognitive flexibility, and the control that we have around that. So since language and executive function are hit hardest, educators should develop intervention plans that explicitly and intensively boost these cognitive areas. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So some research shows that poor brain development in the front and temporal lobes explain what percentage of test score differences between poor and middle class children. So according to an article in JAMA Pediatrics, researchers found that poor brain development in the frontal and temporal lobes explain that up to 1/5, 20% of test score differences between poor and middle class children. We know that educators can't change parents' income or students' access to consistent meals and adequate health care, but what educators can do, and do really, really well, is change the brain. It's really important for us to remember, just like Mark Rowland has summed up here, who is this was from one of his recent books, we need to start by understanding the problem. And like Rowland states, pupils are not at risk of underachievement because of any particular label, such as pupil premium. Rather, it is because of the impact of socioeconomic disadvantage on their learning. He does add in his book that we need to be an expert in our students, not in the pupil premium. Okay, I'm going to just pause for a few seconds again, just to catch our thoughts and consider the so what of this in relation to the schools or the organisations in which we serve. Okay, so moving on, I am going to leave you with one example. It's not about developing cognitive function, but it's about creating an inclusive environment where disadvantaged children are not put in a situation where they are made to feel any different. So I am sure we are all aware of School Jumper Day, and something that is celebrated in lots of our schools across the country. So putting this into my context, and there would be many examples that I could give you, is what we do at times when we expect our parents to provide their children with an item where some may just not be able to afford to do this. So we all have Christmas jumper days where children are encouraged to wear these, and generally we do have a cost attached to these where children are asked and families are asked to actually donate £2 here. So just spend a couple of seconds, thinking about what are the issues around this for children and their families in this situation. Okay, so our solution at Pennyman is we just needed to be a little bit creative, and we needed to allow the children the opportunity to celebrate these events because they're entitled to do it just like every other child across the country, but not create even further heartache and worries for some of our families and communities, especially at Christmas and especially with the cost of living increase. Our children deserve to have the same opportunities as their more affluent peers. And we feel at Pennyman that it's our responsibility to facilitate this. These acts are not detailed in any league tables or data sets, but for us, it's so important for our children and young people to succeed and feel valued in life. So our solution was a really simple one. It just took a little bit of time and consideration and creativity. What we do is we start in January for our Christmas Jumper Day, and we just ask any organisations, any companies, any families, any staff members who have jumpers in January ready for the following year, and we make sure that we have a school stock of Christmas jumpers in here as well. I have put there about appealing to local shops, because what we find is our local shops and some of the bigger stores as well want to support the welfare funds in our academy. and equally are prepared to give us quite large donations because actually they want to give back to the community as well. Another way we could look at this as well is just children wearing something red, green or gold. I think when we step back and look at what we are asking our families to do and provide, we need to understand that not all of our families have the same entitlement and same resources on offer. So just being creative allows us to give our children those opportunities, but not creating any further stress for our families. So next steps. So just take a few seconds to consider independently what you may do and something you may try as a result of this session, something you would ditch, something you may need to pause or stop doing as a school or an educator, and something that you will defer, something you may need to come back to at a later date. So finally, a quote that I use lots with my leaders and staff across school. Whilst disadvantage and poverty are complex, we are some of the best brain surgeons in our field. And if our school is the hospital, then what do we do in the classroom has a real role to play in the overall diet of medicine. The research says that this damage can be reversed, and I believe it is our moral purpose to do everything in our power to make sure this happens and to support our children and our young people.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this lunchtime. This is the last of our Secret World of Schools school dinners sessions, but we have had 3 others before this. So do, if you didn't make it to those, do have a look at those as well once they're on the website too, and have a look at our events pages for other things that we've got coming up between now and the end of March. But thank you all very much for joining us, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. It's been great to see you all. So thank you and goodbye.